heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not in temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Through Christ Jesus our Lord. For thine the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. So welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. This is not yet a required workshop, so thank you for being here. I want to explain to you how to go about getting ready to be ordained as a subdeacon. As you all know, serving in the altar is a big blessing, to be so close to the mysteries and to the throne of God. And it's nice to be aware and understand what's going on. So the Diocese of Los Angeles has 2 exams that you need to pass, an oral exam and a written exam. You have to go in the order of written, and if you pass that, then you move on to the oral. And we're adding a 3rd component, and that is workshops. We're going to have 3 workshops to choose from, and they're on different dates and different locations. You can attend any one of them, but you only attend one. And because of COVID and all of that, we're also adding a Zoom option. So if you can't make it in person, you can always join it through Zoom. And you can obviously join multiple ones if you want to re-practice the hymns, because those are hymns related about the responses in the altar. As far as written material, there is a book that you study. It's the Christ in the Eucharist by Abuna Tadros Malati. And that big PDF file has several books. So Abuna Tadros collected a bunch of themes and broke them down by books. So we only take book 1 from that book, which are the first 7 chapters. It's 52 pages. And one of our blessed deacons just took that section from the big PDF file and put it together, so that's all you have to study. Out of those 7 chapters, you'll have random questions. When you show up to test, the test will be on your laptop or iPad, so you bring a device with you. And we'll log you in, and then you're going to have random 20 questions from a pool of questions that the system pulls from. That way the questions are not the same for everyone, and they're not repeated, at least for the same event. If you pass the written, 70% is passing. So if you pass the written, on the same day you take the written, you'll immediately take the oral exam. And the oral will ask you about practical things that are done in the altar. So that's what we're going to do today. And that's what I was hoping to do, is go over some of the things you want to keep in mind. And if you have questions, obviously, that's why it's better to be in person than Zoom, so you can have questions and answers. And hopefully these workshops will be recorded and available for you to watch again at your own base.
Will the material in the oral be from those same 7 chapters, or what is the source for that?
No, good question. The question is, are the oral questions from the 7 chapters of Abuna Tadros Malati? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, it's maybe 1 or 2% is from the book, but the rest are from the subdeacon duties document that you have. It's about 17 pages, and it's a big font, so it's not a lot of material. And this file that I'm sharing with you, it's also available on the website as helpful notes to study and to keep in mind. So what we ask for the oral exam are practical things that you need to know as a subdeacon. When to light the candles, when to bring the shoria, when to bow down, things like that. So we'll go through the document as quickly as we can, and if we have time, we can go over more material. I can mention the other part of this document, which is not prepared yet, and that is the seasonal rubrics. So the annual rubrics that you will be tested on are the every Sunday, every week normal liturgy that you attend, and what you need to know about that. We're going to have a small oral part, it's not a big one, for seasonal, because you always have the books and you'll be able to refer to them. And by the way, the written exam is closed book, but the oral exam is open liturgy book. So you can take the Khulagi with you for the oral one, and then as we are asking you questions, you can refer to the answers. And obviously, we're looking at the speed with which you retrieve the information. So if it's a matter of just, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about, and flip to the page, that's all we want. We don't need you to memorize, and we don't require memorization of psalms or anything like that. Although you need to know the psalms that you say when you put on the tonia, and the psalms you say when you're on your way to church. Those are mentioned in the book, by the way. So that's what you'll be tested on.
We have to memorize those.
You don't need to memorize the psalms, just the psalm numbers. So you say, oh yeah, when you put on the tonia, it's Psalm 29 and 92. Real easy, just flip them. And then hopefully with time you would memorize them. So as you're putting on your tonia, you'd be reciting them. So that's for the open book, closed book. For the oral, we have the majority is going to be annual, but there's going to be a small part for the seasonal. And Abuna Mina Girgis might record a seminar for that or a workshop. And he is going to cover like what needs to be done for Good Friday, for example, or for Maundy Thursday, Great Thursday, when we have Pascha and we have liturgy, and then back to Pascha. When we change the curtains, what colors we put on during what seasons. If we have a liturgy of the water, what do you do? When do you get it ready? So seasonal things that you need to be aware of. When we have processions, and we'll talk about the procession, the accordion effect, so it can go smoothly. So all these things are going to be in the seasonal rubrics portion. Today we'll cover the annual rubrics. So the first thing you want to know about the tonia is there are no pictures allowed. So you can have a cross on the tonia, but in our diocese, His Eminence Metropolitan Serapion does not want anyone to have any saint pictures on the tonia because it's said for the servant to carry the cross. So that's why you have the tonia on the back of the cross on the back of your tonia. The icons and the pictures of saints have their place, but just not on the deacon's tonia. There's going to be a new system for the badrashel, the stole. The chanters are not going to wear any. The subdeacons and readers will be wearing their stole, and there'll be two different types of stole. They're still working on finalizing the design, and from now on, you will know what the ordination rank is by the stole that you are wearing. And of course, for deacon and subdeacon and archdeacon, they wear it over the shoulder, but for readers and subdeacons, they wear it with the cross on the back. The blessing of tonia happens during 3 times. So at the beginning of the service, that's the first time. And then we can do it again at the time of doing the psalms. And then again at the time of the absolution of the ministers. So you should really come to church on time. As a matter of fact, you might have a question on the test. And says, if the 8 o'clock liturgy starts at 8 o'clock, what time should you come to church? And you have the obvious answers before the gospel, you know. For at least for the subdeacons, you want to come earlier, you know, not later. So when you come, you can definitely get your tonia crossed. If you came a few minutes late, then there's a time designated for the next time we're going to ordain the tonia. And that is after the end of Matins and before we get into reading the Psalms. So Buna ends Matins and says the dismissal, and then you can bring your tonia. Then we pray the Psalms, and we pass out the Psalms and read the Gospel. And then we can anoint one more time before we offer the lamb When you come in the front and you're holding the basket and the wine and water, we can do a crossing there. After Abuna finishes and goes around the altar and then comes out to say the absolution, we switch. The celebrant priest will give the cross to the co-celebrant, and the co-celebrant will come and say the absolution of the ministers. They can cross the tonia at that time too, right? And then the final, no negotiation, is after Abuna finishes the circuit for the Pauline epistle. Because you might be walking in as they are crossing the tonia. It's okay, we're not going to be that stickler. Yeah, and this is the grace period that you get. So if Abuna comes out and says the absolution, and someone didn't catch Abuna to cross the tonia, they'll just wait until Abuna goes around the church, finish it, he'll cross it, and that's done. Yes, Mina?
With that being said, are the priests going to start to stick to that schedule?
We really should, yeah. We kind of like, we don't want the deacons to feel like disrespected or, we're ignoring them or we're mad at them. Sometimes people feel that way. Like if you don't come right away and Abuna doesn't cross it right away, they kind of feel, but that's why we're doing the education, so people know that definitely when the bishops are here or the metropolitan, we stick to the schedule. It's okay when you have multiple priests. It's easier because if you have one priest, it's really distracting. So because Abuna is doing the prayers, and every time there's a pause, he runs and crosses. But if you have multiple priests, it's easy for us to do it. But the system is, just so you know the system is, there are specific times to cross the tonia. Deacon should not cross himself while blessing the tonia. And after crossing the tonia, then there's a half matania. If you watch the video that we prepared from the church like 15 years ago, there's a full matania. We're moving away from that, and just half a matania is enough. And then you kiss the cross in the hand of the priest, and you will recite Psalms 29 and 92 as you put on your tonia. Yes?
So when you bless the tonia at the end of the Lord's Prayer, is that okay to cross?
Yeah.
So am I correct in understanding, because what I was taught, there were different priests and different things, but I was taught that when the greater one is blessing you, you never bless yourself. So
Right.
I was taught when you're taking communion, you don't bless yourself.
Right, that's correct.
When the priest comes by with the censer, you don't cross yourself.
Right.
Bow and accept his blessing. Is
Right.
that all
Right.
according to?
Yes, that's exactly right. You don't cross yourself when Abuna is crossing you or giving you communion or walking around with the censer. That's proper. You don't cross yourself. Okay, the censer. Obviously, you need to practice a lot, and you do that by attending a lot. That's the easiest way to know when to bring the shoria to Abuna, the censer, and all of that. And it's very clear in the book and the red rubrics that are written when to bring it. So if you familiarize yourself with these times, you'll do just fine. They will ask you in the oral exam, when do you bring the censer to the priest? After the reconciliation prayer. Or when do you bring the censer to the priest? Well, there's matins, there's vespers. You bring it to the priest after the arba'an na'us, the symbols, after at the litanies, at the litany of the gospel. So we'll be specific so we can narrow it down, otherwise it'll be all over. And be mindful that in St. Cyril's liturgy, it's different. You bring the censer at different times. So just familiarize yourself with that. Again, you don't need to memorize anything, it's all written. And if you have your own book and you make your markings, it'll be great. Some of the deacons from our church love to borrow Archie Jacob's book, because he's got candles when you need to light candles. He drew a censer when you need to, so you just flip the page, you go to it. You're fine, it's okay to do that. That's absolutely right. Mina, can you bring me a censer, please? Obviously, you want to bring get the censer ready a few minutes before you start, so the charcoal is well lit. We tried to describe the best way to hold the censer, because sometimes it's held in a way that obstructs the priest to put in the incense. So when you bring the censer to Abuna, I'll demonstrate to you. Thank you. So, come, Mina. If Mina is a priest and he's gonna put incense in the shoria, pretend like you have a spoon and you're gonna put incense. Okay. So here is the incense, and here is the shoria. So this is what you try to avoid. Look how much obstacles the Abuna has to cross to get to that. And then don't do this. Don't bring it to Abuna like this. And it's okay because sometimes people are not familiar, so they're kind of nervous. Also, the right way is to hold the top with the left hand, and the bottom one. Of course, if it's hot, use a cloth or something. And this is the proper way to hold it. It doesn't go anywhere. If Abuna bumps into it, if the spoon hits it, try to knock this out of my hand. I'm holding it. It's not just like from the tips. I'm holding it. And then when I bring it to Abuna, I notice people still have the right hand up high. But look at the surface of the censer. It's still covered. But watch this. If you just lower your hand, I'm still holding it hard. I can even let go of this and nothing will happen. But the idea is to have this open. To have this top open, and then it's like this. And then I don't let go because this is dangerous. Obviously, so you bring your hand up high first, and then you let go. And then the priest will take it from you. So, thank you.
Do you hold this first? Because I know some priests, they like it if you hold this and then go.
You could. Perfect. You could pull the part in the middle. Keep it here for visually. Yes?
I'm left-handed. So is there an issue which hand you put on which part?
Not at all. As long as the priest has a clear access to the top without any of the chains or the cover, partially covering.
The cross there, right hand issues, but not with the shoulder.
Right. The cross always the right hand, yeah. And here is a list of when to bring the shoria in the document. So you have that. You all have this document, yes? If you don't, let me know. I'll send it to you. And when you get recommended, they'll send you an email, and it'll have a link to all these documents, by the way. St. Basil liturgy is different from Censer, and then it lists when we bring in the censer during Censer. Right? Candles. Sorry?
We don't need to know when in St. Gregory there.
St. Gregory is very much like St. Basil. Good question. The Sharia system is the same in the Gregorian liturgy. It just takes longer between prayers to get to the part where you offer the censer. And I wanted to cover everything, so that's why we're going quickly over the stuff. But when you go back and read it, it'll make a lot of sense to you. For candles, we just want you to be safe. We never want you to bow down with the candle. Just to be safe, nothing. And also, like His Eminence reminded us that you do not light a candle and put it under a bushel, but you put it on a lampstand. In the video, we may not have been clear. The video I'm talking about is Serving in Heaven, the old video that kids learn how to serve in the altar and all of that. It has like 97% accurate information. Some information just need tweaking. Make a wise decision when to put out the candle after you've turned it on, to give yourself time to come back and bow down. This is important because we don't want you to miss the opportunity to worship, and you'd be busy putting away the candle, and we're supposed to be bowing down at that time, out of respect for the body. So, for example, you can put away the candles during Amen, Amen, Amen. We'll still have another part after that, but just to be safe, we agreed that it's safer to go, especially the churches where the candle is put away from the altar. It will take you time to walk to it, put it away, walk back, and then it's time to worship. Don't blow out the candle with your mouth. Get into the habit of that, especially after you take communion, because we don't want any part of the communion to come out when you are blowing into the candle. We have a candle snuffer in the altar area, and it would be great if you start using it. I'm sure if you do, the kids will start imitating you. And here we mention when we light the candles during the choosing of the lamb. And the choosing of the lamb, there's a change. We used to have 4 candles. If 4 people are serving, then we have 4 candles. But Amba Serapion says you only need 2 candles when the 2 people outside are holding the water and the wine. So the one holding the wine with the candle, one holding the water with the candle, one is standing for the offering. The other 2 deacons are in the altar. They're waiting for the choosing of the lamb. When we are done with choosing of the lamb, then they light the 2 candles too. And then we go around the altar, honor and glory, glory and honor. And as we reach to the end of the procession, Abuna will take the wine, he will put it in a chalice, and then he'll take the water and put it in a wine cruet and empty that. And after Abuna's done, put in the wine and water, then put out all the candles. And then we continue the prayers without any candles. Yes? Yes, good question. The deacon holding the wine is the only one that crosses his hands. The water does not cross. Of course, this is a reminder of the appearance of the sign of the cross in the Old Testament, when Joseph brought his children to be blessed by Jacob, and he put the older one on his right, and the younger one on his left. And then Jacob crossed, and he blessed the younger one with the firstborn, and the older one with the other hand. So Joseph said, "Not like this, my father. This is their order." And he said, "I have done what I have done." And this is the same thing that Jacob did to his father when he took the firstborn blessing from his father, and his brother Esau did not take.
The candles, when the gospel's being read, are those to be held up on the corners of the lectern or just anywhere on the side?
No, good question. When you hold 2 candles for the reading of the altar, you can stand back. They're not supposed to be on the lectern.
Okay, so anywhere.
Yes, just to be safe. We light candles during the reading of the gospel. We light candles at the beginning of the sanctification prayers, and light candles again at the beginning of the fraction. And after the fraction, we bow down, right? This might be a question, by the way. When the fraction is completed, what does the deacon do? You bow down, you get ready for, if someone needs to help Abuna turn the pages, then this is important. Technically speaking, we should memorize the liturgy, the priests. But we haven't, and it's a weakness, so we are allowed to use the manuscripts. But you want to help the priest not to touch anything after sanctifying the gifts. That's why you see Abuna if he's praying the liturgy with someone else, he stands away, but he shouldn't touch anything after consecrating the bread and the wine to become the body and the blood of the Lord. So turning the pages is it bothers me when I have to do it, because I know I shouldn't be touching anything until the communion is completed. I wash my hands and I drink the water, then it's okay. But there are exceptions. That's why when you come with the bukhur for the commemoration of the saints, you notice that the priest will have to hold a lifafa to hold the incense and put the incense in the sharia, because he doesn't want to even touch the bukhur with his hand, as much as possible. So your help in this, now you need heightened awareness of when to turn the pages, what's coming next, especially for the fraction. We might have a test question asking you to open the fraction. Go to the fraction of the 29th of the month. Go to the fraction of such and such. You can use a book. You don't have to memorize the pages, but you have to know where it is in the book. You can't just keep flipping through the pages. So familiarize with yourself with where the fractions begin, and then it will be there. If Abuna wants a different one, he can say. But as a subdeacon, you should know the seasons, and you should know what matches with the fraction.
So sometimes when I'm looking through the fractions, it'll be like another fraction for the resurrection or something.
Right.
How do we know which one of those is?
Abuna will tell you, if there are two fractions for the occasion, just turn to the first one, because they're going to be back to back. So if Abuna says, point to it, that means, another thing, we don't talk in the altar. We just don't talk. We develop a system of how we distribute the responses. So in the end, you do not need to just slight hand motions or eye motions, and that's it. So Abuna might motion like this, or he might motion like that. This means turn, at least here. Every priest, of course, will have their own system. But if I go like this, that means turn the page. If I go like this, that means it's the right page.
When there are multiple deacons at the altar, and they're taking turns on the responses, is there a system?
Yes. The system, obviously, if there's an archdeacon or a deacon, technically speaking, there are responses that have to be said by the archdeacon or deacon. But we're not going to get into that for now. If you develop the system, let's say this is the altar, so an Abuna standing here facing this way. So you have a deacon here next to the book. You have a deacon here. This deacon, by the way, is going to do the Sharia, because he's the closest one to Abuna and the Sharia. So let me do this to make it look. So this is the altar you're looking at. So it's very simple to just start from the corner and go around.
So you're going backwards versus the way that we would be circling.
It doesn't matter which way, just agree to the system. It really doesn't matter. There's no right to it. But sometimes people don't feel comfortable saying certain responses. And that's when it gets kind of out of turn. So they skip one, and then they go back to the one, but then the next one is going to be skipped by. So one of the questions that we might ask you in the oral exam is to say the response for the Litany of the Fathers. So you turn to the page, no problem, that's allowed. And we just want to hear you say, pray for the life of the Pope Abba Tawadros and his partners in the service, his Eminence Metropolitan Serapion and Bishop. We also have Mar Ephraim II, so we want to see how smoothly you will say it. You don't need to say it. George is going to go over the responses in the workshops. But you can say it with the lahn, that's awesome, that's great. Or with the hymn, like with the tune. Or you can just read it with a very small, slight tune, but you are fluent. You're not stumbling over it. And if we end up with a system where all those who are serving in the altar were tested and trained, then we wouldn't have the problem of skipping and jumping around. Another thing, sometimes in liturgies, when we have to accommodate for, like let's say it's an Arabic liturgy, but we have kids from the summer break are attending, so we go both languages, or vice versa, it's an English liturgy, and some people are here for like a condolences or something. Some people think you have to match the priest. Like if he's, and that's good. That's a good system. If the priest is praying in English, respond in English. If Arabic, then Arabic. But it's okay to keep the turn, as far as I'm concerned. It's okay to keep the turn and just respond in the language you feel comfortable with. No issue. Sometimes they think they have to skip. Oh, Abuna prayed English, so he's the English. Okay, so you say it. And that's when you're not going in turn. But in here, hopefully we can have I'm hoping to ask your permission to have maybe a meeting once a month. And we can go through the liturgy and explain it and tell you the movement and the rubrics and the rites and where it comes from. And sometimes it might be dry, sometimes it'll be very interesting. But we would agree on systems. And then you come to this church, you know how it goes. It just goes 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it's easier, smoother. Good question. What is the fraction for the 29th? There's a fraction here that says for the major feasts. And it has all the major feasts in it, including resurrection and ascension and descension of the Holy Spirit, but also the other major feasts. So that's the trick question. If they tell you open to the fraction of the 29th of Paba, for example, there's a fraction that says every 29th of the month we celebrate the occasion of Annunciation, Christmas, and Resurrection. It's page 417. It's called A Fraction to the Son for the Feasts of Our Lord.
So that's the 29th.
It's for the 29th of the month, 10 months out of the year. It's not every month. 10 months out of the year. Because on the 29th of every month, we celebrate the Annunciation, Christmas, and Resurrection. Because Annunciation and Resurrection happened on the 29th of Paramhat. Christmas happened on the 29th of, you should know that one, Kiak. So the number 29 in the Coptic month is special. So every 29th of the month, we remember these 3 feasts, except for Tuba and Amshir, the Coptic month. And some say because those are the 2 months that the Virgin Mary was not pregnant with the Lord Jesus Christ. So we don't celebrate the 3 occasions on these 2 months. And they say it's also like a reminder of the Old Testament where they didn't have the Annunciation or the Christmas or Resurrection. So if a tricky priest says, bring me the 29th a fraction of the 29th of Tuba, it would be wrong to bring this. We're not that tricky, but I heard one tester was trying to be clever. So I'm preparing you, right? So you should be okay.
So the 29th of Tuba wouldn't be.
No, 29th of Tuba or Amshir would just be the annual one. The annual one. You know where the annual one is? You just turn the page because we're not going to any special occasions. Like in the St. Basil liturgy, the annual one is page 222.
So why on those 2 months do we not do it?
Okay, so we're not going to be trying to trick you to make you fail. We're going to try to be helping you to succeed actually and pass the exam. So if someone on a committee, oral committee, asks you a question to turn to the fraction of the 29th of the month, and you say, the one for the feasts, and you say yes. So you go to page 417. That's it. I'm just describing, if someone wants to be tricky, they can say 29th of Tuba or Meshir. Those 2 months, we don't celebrate the 29th of the month. They're just another day.
So all the other months.
The 29th of the 29th of any other month is we say use a feastal tone, and it's celebratory, and we are celebration, and even the response is Alleluia. It's the feast. We remember the feasts on those days. But for Tuba and Amshir, we don't do that. We just, if it's a Wednesday, it's a Wednesday. If it's a Saturday, it's a Saturday. No change of tune or readings. No, the feast of the Annunciation of the birth of the Lord, Nativity of the Lord, and Resurrection of the Lord, all these three feasts happen on the 29th of a Coptic month. Annunciation and Resurrection happen on the same day, same month, 29th of Brahmat. Christmas happened on the 29th of Kiak. So the church got together and said, these three feasts, every time we have a 29th day of the month, we're going to have a celebration for these three feasts. Except 2 months to remember the Old Testament. Because in the Old Testament, we didn't have Annunciation, birth, or resurrection. It's a little bit, yani this is, when you get ordained a subdeacon, we don't expect you to know everything, but it would be nice to continue to learn and train. And that's what I'm hoping we can do when we continue to have ongoing meetings in the church. Okay?
So that was going to be my question. In the ongoing meetings, we're going to learn the meanings behind all these movements and things, because some of these things that you're telling us not to do anymore, we grew up with.
Yes,
So were
yes.
these just bad habits and we were ignoring the rights of the church?
Yes. Thank you, Andy. Very, very good question. Some of the things that you'll even see in the video, we were trained that way. We grew up with it, and this is how you do it. But the ritual committee of the Holy Synod meets on regular basis, and they study the history and the movement and the rubrics from old manuscripts as they continue to find them. And they're trying to refine and come to consensus. So some things are absolutely concrete. All the church is doing it. Other things, they are different from diocese to diocese to diocese. And guess what? Within that diocese, you're going to have priests that come from different schools of thoughts on these things. So for the diocese to be consistent, we pick one way just so that there's standard in the diocese. If the ritualistic committee comes from the Holy Synod and says, we found out that this is the way, then that's what we would do. Because Amba Serapion is very keen on following the rules of the Holy Synod and the Church. Otherwise, everyone will start making up their own rules. But he said the Church will be chaos. So when you have a practice where there's no consensus, it's okay to come to agreement as a group. And Sayyidina sometimes does this with us in the clergy meeting, where he would present to us like the right, and some churches are doing it this way, some churches are doing it that way. And then Sayyidina would say, well, we need to standardize it. And, we start making arguments, well, this is this is that. And then we come to an agreement in the end, knowing that this is not it's not a clear rule out of the Synod, and that's why we're having to make these modifications. But good catch. And when we study, it's not going to be a study, it's going to be a meeting. I'll share these things with you. We were used to do this, but in the Diocese of Los Angeles, this is what we're going to be doing. So, lighting the candles, you should familiarize yourself with that.
There was one spot in there where you said you light a candle that was...
Where? We light a candle during the gospel, at the sanctification, at the fraction, when the priest says the holies for the holy. This is after the fraction. Abuna says when we all say, Our Father who art in heaven. So we say the Lord's Prayer, and then everybody bows down.
And that's when you light it.
No. Everybody's bowing down. Abuna saying a ton of inaudible prayers.
Number 8.
Yes. And then Abuna stands up after all the inaudible prayers, and he says, yes, remember our assemblies, bless them. And the deacon would say, Sutis amin, ketub nemati sometabu theokosumin. Right after that, Abuna will say, the holies for the holy, and that's when everybody stands up, and that's when you light the candle. So before holies of holy, there's a long period of bowing down. Yes,
And then everybody puts them out except for the one doing the confession.
right.
Who did the confession?
Yes, the confession, Amin, Amin, Amin.
Do you normally?
We sometimes the deacons are confused. They just let the arshi light the candle for the conclusion. But when we are dipping the blood with the body 3 times, we're supposed to have the candles on during that time.
And shouldn't the deacons be standing during that time?
Yes, as soon as Abuna says the holy is for the holy, then the deacons rise.
I'm not used to everybody staying knelt
Yeah,
until after that, until we say one is the Holy Father, one is the Holy Son.
yeah.
That's what the book says.
The old Khulagi book says to rise from bowing down when you say one is the Holy Father, one is the Holy Son. But for the deacons in the altar, you're going to get up to light the candles and get it ready for when Abuna says Irini Pasi, and then he dips the blood to the body.
I don't think I've ever seen us do that.
We should. Pay attention, you might see it. We do it definitely on Sundays. It's page 230.
But even when we're talking in terms of the blood is
Yes, that's a good sign. The end is saying Tilo. A good rule of thumb, if the blood is not covered, then you probably need a candle. I say probably because when you're worshiping, you're not going to have the candle because we don't want to cause fires and do not light a candle and put it under a bushel and all of that.
So that's just a pretty short window.
Very short. That's why I say you light it when Abuna says the holy is for the holy, because it's very short. Yeah.
That, and then everybody else puts it out except,
The archdeacon.
wow, that is a tiny window of light.
And that's why sometimes it's, especially if it's a fast liturgy.
Yes, I've never
Yeah.
seen it lit.
Yeah.
So that's probably why it's such a short.
Yeah. But good eye, you caught it right there. Whoever is going to say the confession, that one remains with the cross and the candle.
So the book says to raise your heads there, but that's for the congregation. The one serving, when you say, remember, O Lord, our assemblies, that's when we're supposed to get up?
The deacon would say, Suti Samin Ketub Nematiso Metavovetheo Proschomen, and the congregation would say, Amin, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. Then you can rise.
That's when the deacons at the altar are supposed to rise?
Yeah, and light the candle and get it ready for the response.
Okay, so at the 3 Lord have mercies, which is when most people get up.
Yeah,
A lot of
yeah,
people do anyway.
yeah. Not a lot of people remain until one is a Holy
Yeah,
Father.
I noticed that.
Mm.
You know, look at
I was trained that way. You get up when you say one is the Holy Father.
One last question.
Sure?
I noticed on the rules it says, do not point the candle.
Yes, the thing.
You're taught during when Abuna's putting the,
Yeah, bring the candle.
bring it close. Why not?
It changed. It's in the video. In the video, it says when the priest is consecrating the blood, to point to the blood, to the body, and then to the blood. But in the diocese, we're not going to be doing that anymore. Sometimes, it went too far. At times, the deacon was crossing with Sayyidina or the Buna with the candle.
But it feels like the deacon there would be extending some kind of blessing or something.
Yeah,
He's extending
yeah,
towards it, and
yeah.
that doesn't feel like
No way. We don't have.
For growing up, it was always a sign of reverence. It was always a sign like you're acknowledging what's happening. For us, we were always taught the symbolism of holding a candle as the angels on the altar.
Mm-hmm.
And you're witnessing, you're present to what's at hand.
That's why it was in the video originally, but then we changed it. So now you just hold the candle. You don't.
So it's more out of safety and knowingness.
Maybe also not to be confused, like Teal was saying, there's no participation of the deacon in the consecration. It's only the celebrant priest that is doing the invocation of the Holy Spirit. And the deacon who is going to say this might be a test question, by the way. The deacon who's going to say the confession, you don't go in front of the priest during the three prayers of when we take the blood and dampen the body. So, you know, the three prayers that you're going to have the candles, everybody stands in their place. And the one who's going to say the confession, after Abuna says the last one, which is the body and the blood of Emmanuel, our God, this is true, Amen. The congregation will say, Amen, I believe. Then you go and stand across from Abuna with the cross on the right hand and the candle on the left.
So when he begins his confession,
Yes.
is when you go.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Oh, I forgot a part. I'm sure it's in here, or maybe not. Remember, during the reconciliation prayer, you have to hold the cross across from Abuna before he takes off the prosphary. So we say the first part of the reconciliation prayer, O God, great and eternal, who formed man, and then pray for the perfect peace, love, and one holy apostolic church. And then a deacon has to go to the other side and hold the candle. And then you take off the cover.
Cross.
Yeah, just take the cross. And in the diocese? Yes, good question. The highest rank, like if there are two priests, then the priest will help take the covering off of the altar.
So it's basically just the time that he's holding up
No. I'm back at the beginning of the liturgy. I'm referring to something I forgot to mention. When we start the liturgy and say the creed, we believe in one God, and then Abuna is going to start here and say, O God, great and eternal, who formed man. The deacon is going to say to the congregation, pray for the holy kiss. After that, you hold the cross in front of Abuna on the other side. And Abuna is going to say the second part of the reconciliation prayer.
Yeah, but what I'm asking is, when you are holding up what's it called?
The confession with the...
Yeah, because when you're doing the reconciliation prayer, you're holding up.
Oh yeah, the corporal. Okay, yeah.
So
Yes.
you're holding the
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So when the priest is holding the corporal and says, "Ken pekti mati b'masaratik ya Allah," then on the other side, the deacon standing with the cross.
So that whenever you're holding it,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
holding the cross.
And the highest rank would be holding. And say it with the... the deacon who has the turn to say it can be the one to hold the cross.
Yeah, but he's going to be at that point taking out.
You have to have memorized it, yeah. Yeah.
And just, I mean, if he's using a microphone. Okay.
It's not a, yes, Bishop. For the corporal during the reconciliation prayer. So when Abuna is praying the story of creation, O God, great and eternal, you created us, you loved us, and then we sinned, and then there was a barrier between man and God, and that's what the corporal represents. On the other side, Christ, of course, is the one who removed that barrier between us and God. So on the other side, there's salvation represented in the cross, which is not seen because the corporal is covering it for now. And then as soon as the prayer is finished, Christ has reconciled us, and then the reconciliation is apparent to us, is clear.
Barrier comes down.
Yeah, then the cross is clear to the congregation. And it would be really nice for the deacon not to put the cross down until Abuna puts down the corporal. because sometimes the deacon is anticipating taking off the cover, so they put the cross on their wedding. And we get busy in the movement and we forget about the symbolism and the rites. Deacon serving an altar. Deacon who serves an altar should be ordained in this diocese. You have to have a permission from Sayyidina, basically. This was done because sometimes people may have been ordained in other dioceses but not permitted to serve. If they come to our diocese and they come to get a permission, we make them go back and get a permission from where they came from. And just for organization sake. You serve at the will of the metropolitan and the bishop and the priest.
Your ordination in any other diocese is recognized in our diocese, correct?
Of course, you don't get ordained again. But just to be sure that there's nothing against you. Like, it gets sticky if someone like is getting into a divorce or something like that, or God forbid. We want to make sure the servants of the altar have a good, solid spiritual life. And you could have that and then you're still a party to something like that. It's not the end, but it does need a little bit of investigation to make sure you're the innocent party and you have nothing to do.
In the early church, if you just visited another area, you had to have a letter.
Yes. In order to give everyone a chance, deacons should alternate the responses. And we covered that to pick a system and stick to it. Don't use emphatic hand gestures to get the attention of other deacons inside the altar. Don't talk inside the altar. Don't sign the congregation. Don't sing the congregation responses. This is a big one. And you might actually have a test on the question, on the test saying, what do you do if the congregation messes up outside in the responses? And you do nothing. It's not your business. You are in the altar to say the response. Of course, I've had in the beginning, way in the beginning when we were starting the church, I'd have one deacon that's helping me with the midweek liturgy. Sometimes, you even have to call people and say, are you coming? Because, when you're a new church and you're forming and coming together, the group of people, it takes a little bit of extra work. So if you're the only deacon, obviously it's going to be okay to say the responses for the congregation and the deacon, because you're the only one. But if there's a chance to have someone in the altar and someone outside, then it's preferred that way.
Is the appropriate thing that say it keeps happening? Is it appropriate thing to step outside and let the chanter know or something like that?
No, after the liturgy.
So if they're continuing with long responses or messing up.
Yeah. If Abuna motions and gives the permission to go address it, then yeah. But I guess the bottom line is sometimes deacons enjoy the hymns for the congregation, and they're standing right there in front of the altar and in front of the sacrament, and they're saying it because they enjoy it. There needs to be reverence, and you are concentrating on what's happening. And the congregation gets the role, the deacon gets the role, the priest gets his turn. Yeah.
What about during communion and you're standing guarding the body? While the priest is giving you communion, can you chant the hymns?
No. Good question. The question was for people who are following, if you are guarding the mysteries and you're saying the distribution songs with the deacons, and it's preferred not to.
When you do these classes, would it be possible to touch on the atmosphere of this panic atmosphere that that we see sometimes where there's a deacon making sure everybody do this, it's just, it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
I go, this is the peaceful place that maybe convey to deacons that if the priest has to wait for a few seconds on the shoria, that's actually better than having this panicked atmosphere that
Yes.
if
Yes.
somebody misses something,
Yeah.
then we can go back and we can do that. We can wait a second.
The comment being made is about being organized and not rushed and not nervous in organizing the service. And I think the more we spend time and the more we go over the information, people know, especially when we single out the subdeacons that are going to serve in the altar. They're going to know what the system is and what the preferences are. And with time, it'll just be, hopefully it doesn't become a routine to pray, but a routine in knowing what needs to get done. And it's done like secondhand.
We have at times people that they're not even waiting until you miss something.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's just this panic.
Yeah. One of my favorite things in the Catholic Church, by the way, they have a break between every prayer, song, so the choir will say the song, they'll do their part, and they'll finish and they'll stop. And there'll be a pause. And then the priest will go and then say his part. And when the priest is finished, there's a pause. We sometimes go like, we don't take a breath and if you stop, some deacons will, jump in and pick up, and it's just ongoing. Sometimes these pauses add to the understanding and reflection and absorbing. So I agree with you. Hopefully we can organize that, and churches may organize deacon meetings, and he can discuss these things. Yes, Bishop.
I thought the prayer should be continuous.
When you're saying the doxologies, for example, that should be continuous. When we are gonna say Apegikavol Messa and several parts of it, yeah, that's continuous. But like when we finish the prayers in the altar and the consecration of the mysteries, then we're gonna move into a new phase, the songs or the hymns of the distribution. And the distribution hymns are categories. You have Psalm 150. You finish that, then there's a pause. And then you have the Madiha, or the whatever you're going to use. And then if you're going to have a hymn, if we're going to say Masalan, for the resurrection, when Katani chorus or something like that. So there would be a clear pause. We finish the psalm. Now we're going to go to the hymn, then we're going to go to a different hymn. It's nice, those breaks identify where things are. Don't lean on or touch the altar during the liturgy. Only consecrated servants can touch the altar during the service. Outside the service, of course, but we believe the altar is transformed to be the throne of God. That's why, there's reverence. You can't lean on it or take a break or something like that.
It's okay to have, put your hands on the liturgy book?
Of course, yeah, absolutely. No.
That's my common way of standing is with my hands on
Perfect. You're not touching the altar. Yes?
Also, holding candle, on the altar.
Sometimes people, when they get in the habit of holding the candle on the altar, it came to a point when they just put it and leave it standing. They're mesmerized that they're able to make it stand. But then what's the point of the stands that we have? This is the deacon holding his hand for the candle.
So we can't.
You shouldn't. You should hold it high. Yes, Joseph.
So, I don't know how appropriate this question is, but I was just wondering, what is the altar in terms of consecration? Because I understand that we have the altar board that we throw behind, or that we set softly behind it. So I was wondering, is that like a temporary thing, or is that the way, are those coupled together? Do we understand that the altar is not consecrated without the board?
Very good question. So the question is, if the altar is not consecrated and there's a board on it, is it still the same thing as a consecrated altar? And the answer is yes, because as soon as you put the altar table on any table, that table becomes off limits and you can't touch it or wear shoes near it. And when we consecrate our altar, we won't need the altar board anymore. But it shouldn't matter if the altar is consecrated or not. When you have the altar board, you still don't touch the altar.
So that's temporary until we get a permanent structure.
Even when you have a permanent structure and a consecrated altar, you still don't touch.
I meant like the board, sorry.
What about the board?
Like putting the board on top.
Yeah, we put the board temporarily. Yes.
Like we've used these folding tables for an altar. When the board comes off, it's.
Yes, it's a regular table again. Yeah. Should focus on the holy sacrifice, the entire liturgy. So we don't want deacons who serve in the altar to be looking at the people. Your east is always where the sacrifice is. So the priest is standing in front of the altar. His east is facing east, but he's facing the sacrament actually. The deacon standing on this side, their east is looking this way, the sacrament. And the east of these deacons is the sacrament. So everybody is gathered around the sacrament. Who should bring the censer to the priest? Number 10, closest deacon to the censer. During the incense circuit, the deacons would say the responses. And this is important. When you go around the altar with the priest, there are responses you're supposed to be saying. You can write them on a piece of paper, you can memorize them. If you go to page 15 or page 13, if you have the big thick liturgy book. This is the circuit that we do all the time. In this instance, it's the circuit for Vespers or Matins. The priest will have his inaudible prayers, but it always ends with 3 litanies. At the bottom half of page 13, it says, "We ask you, our Master, remember, O Lord, the peace of your one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church." So Abuna is saying this one while he's standing in front of the altar, and you're holding the cross on the other side, and you say, "Pray for the peace of the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Orthodox Church of God." You say it in your head. And you say it as you're walking to the other side.
Every circuit or just once?
Every circuit, these 3 litanies are repeated. Every circuit. So as you're walking, because Abuna will say his part and then walk around. And as he's walking around, you're walking around to meet Abuna on the other side. So that's when you say your response. So the first one is to say the response of the litany of the peace. Then when you're standing over here, Abuna on this side is saying a prayer for the litany of the fathers, the patriarch and Ambasarapion. You're standing over here, so as you're walking around, you say the response, pray for the high priest, Pope Papa Avatawadros, and yeah. And then when you come back here, Abuna will say over here, the litany of the assemblies. You're saying the response for the litany of the assembly as you walk around. So
Nobody has ever done this, I think, in history. What I've ever seen.
actually, the older deacons are saying it inaudibly, and that's the problem. They're saying it in secret and nobody's know.
So would it be possible to put a laminated card up there
Sure.
that when we're doing it that we can?
You're only going to have it on that one side. You're not going to be able to have it on this side.
No, I don't mean to leave there. I mean a loose laminated card.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, absolutely.
That it stays on the altar, that when we pick up the cross, we can, like, the first rotation, the second one says first rotation.
Any volunteers to make us a little tiny? Yeah? Okay. Hmm?
Let's get a tattoo. I could do it if we had a card, but
Yeah.
there's so much to have.
So it's important to know that you go around the altar 3 times. 1.5 of those 3 times, you're saying responses. The first time, the response of the peace. Second half, the response of the fathers. Third half, the response of the assembly. What do you say in the 4th half? And the 5th half? And the 6th half? Nothing. You're done. You said your responses.
So
the
back
peace.
and front.
Yes.
Then the second one is
The fathers,
front
yeah.
to back.
Uh-huh.
And then the third one.
And then the assembly, yeah.
And then the other 1.5 rotations.
See, what's going on is when Abuna starts here, he's saying the litany of the peace. So you're saying a response to that. And then Abuna comes here, he said the litany of the fathers. You're saying a response to that. When he's here, he says the litany of the assemblies. You're saying the response to that. Abuna finishes the whole litany of the assemblies as he's going back for the 1.5 circuit. So he is not saying anything that requires responses. Yes, yes. And try to make them small. Yeah, not small font. It's not a big prayer, but make it like something maybe that fits this size. Or you can use your phone, obviously. Naam? Naam? Only for prayers. It would be great if you don't. It would be great if you don't. Yeah. I much prefer cards or paper than the phone. Absolutely.
Not to be a stickler, but about
No?
number 10, you said the deacon closest to the censer. Is it the deacon closest to the incense who's bringing the shorter?
The one who is between the priest and the censer.
So it should be closest to the incense.
Yeah, that's a better way to do it. Yes. Closest to the incense. That's a good one.
I thought that meant censer, the priest who senses.
So the three, I'm sorry to belabor this, but
No.
the three responses we use silently, they start on page 13.
Right.
So that one over here on page 12 at the bottom left, that one is not part of that?
Actually, the priest will say that on your behalf because hardly anybody knows this one.
Okay.
Remember the issue, Tilo, is all these prayers are said inaudibly, so you have no idea where Abuna is. So you're just saying your responses because you know that's where you should be.
We do our page 13 and
For
15
yeah,
and 16.
yeah. And that could be definitely a test question. You need to know them in order because we want to make sure that you're doing that part. Like, see, somebody may not know that they need to do that. Maybe a lot of the kids, when we're training them, they probably have no clue about it. It would be nice to teach it to them, especially when we have the cards. We give it to them and say this, and then they come on the other, we give them the other card. Okay, now we get to the deacon praying the confession, and I think that will answer some of Nina's questions. These are in the other document. You have another document that says duties of the deacon. It's a PDF. It has many of these points in there. The deacon who said the confession should take communion after the priests have and archdeacons and deacons. You stand at the main entrance of the altar when the priest is ready to distribute communion to the rest of the deacons. Stand facing the altar while the priest is distributing the Holy Communion. After the deacons receive communion, the deacon walks backward in front of the priest while facing the holy body at all times. The deacon is the guardian of the holy body and should always be next to the holy body. So Amba Serapion would instruct you to do the following. Let's say Abuna is over here preparing for the fraction, and you already took communion. So the deacon who said the confession already took communion, because Abuna will give the co-celebrant and the altar deacon the communion usually. Sometimes we just add the deacons with the altar deacons, but technically it's the clergy and then the altar deacons take communion first. So Abuna's here still making the fractions. Your place is to stand here. even though you took communion. You stand here with the cross and the candle and the corporal, because you're guarding the mysteries. We're still breaking the fraction. When the deacons start coming to take communion, then you go back here and you stand, and Abuna will be here. You'll be behind Abuna, and the deacons will come in between the two of you.
So you stand right there until our time.
Yes, yes.
And when there's only one Luna and he's doing the body, giving the body, there's one person with a candle standing in front of.
Yes, if Abuna is by himself and he goes to give the body, one deacon has to come and stand in front of the blood.
Okay. So you're on the side when he's finishing the confession.
No,
No, so you're across, so then you come up to the side, you wait there. When he gives you communion, do you back up to the same spot or do you circle the altar back?
prefer to move forward and circle back around.
Okay, to back to the same
Yeah.
spot, and then stay there until the deacons are coming.
Yeah.
Now, what if the deacons are already lined up behind you?
Then you just go stand, you don't go around. Yeah,
Okay.
good question.
So after the confession, you should be standing in the corner, not
Yes, yes,
so you never.
yeah, yeah. It's number 5. The deacon is a guardian of the holy body and should always be next to the holy body. So when the body is being distributed, Abuna is next to it and next to the body, and the deacon is given like a pathway for the deacons to come between the two, the guardian of the mysteries and the presbyter. If we're not yet distributing, then your eyes on there in case something falls, you let Abuna know something happened. If Abuna's didn't see it or something like that. Suppose the priest will administer Holy Communion to someone outside the sanctuary. This is in case we give communion inside. Then you have to guard the body. Abuna will go outside with another deacon holding a candle and give the communion outside and then come back in. You haven't seen.
He goes out without the hat.
Yes, yes. The deacon should not say Amen in response to the priest saying to the communicant, this is the body of Christ, this is the blood of Christ. It's not your job to say Amen, it's the job of the believer who's receiving the communion to say Amen. Sometimes I prayed with visitors and they're standing there saying Amen for every single person coming forward. That's your task is to watch out, make sure nobody's coming with shoes. If someone is sick, you alert Abuna that after they're done, they have to take communion to someone in a second pew, third pew. You are making sure that no strangers coming into the church. If you know everybody and someone is not baptized, if you can assist, obviously you may not know. If there are any animals coming nearby or something, you're like the bodyguard of the president. You're ready to jump in the line of fire to save your boss from harm. The deacon who's holding of course Christ will save you, you will not save Christ, but
Can we have a list of names and pictures of heretics? Part of the job is to throw heretics out, and I think we should have a little list.
make sure to wait on the towels and folding of the corporals until the dismissal of the angel. I know sometimes we get a little bit ahead of ourselves, and especially deacons are standing around, they're not doing anything, and they start folding. It really wouldn't be an issue if it wasn't distracting you from guarding the mysteries, from respecting the body. But it becomes a problem when we need to have things done, and they're not being done because someone is folding and all that. Yes, ma'am.
Question, when going around, so when the priest is going to come outside to give the communion to the congregation, you go around backwards once around the altar, and then when you come back in, if it's only one priest, you go back around and then come around this way?
It's a matter of where you're coming from. If you're coming from the side, then yeah, you go around. If you're coming straight at it, then you just go straight to the front. Yeah, and you always go in the altar from the right, and you exit from the left. This is the next section, the royal doors of the church. You should try to avoid as much as you can using. Other churches have the side door like all the way down there. It will take time actually. Like St. Mary, they have a really long walk to the door, and then you come around and it's a long walk back. Well, if you're doing the litany of the gospel, you need to be inside so you can assist the priest to go around with the bishara and the cross. That's why there are exceptions. Very minor. If it's not one of these three situations, then you do need to go around. It doesn't matter how long it is. So the exemptions are after the litany of the gospel, when you're standing behind Abuna. If you don't leave early enough to meet Abuna inside, you just come in and you can go through the royal doors. When you are carrying the wine and the water, after we choose the lamb, you can walk right inside with Abuna because he'll need the water right away to baptize the lamb.
So the rule about like you don't cross in front of the altar from right to left.
Except for this one.
Okay,
You
so
can just
if
go
you have
in.
the water, you can cross from right to left.
Yeah.
You don't have to go around?
Yeah.
Okay.
It would be nice if you can, but sometimes if it's a quick liturgy and everything is happening quick, you can cooperate. If not, it's best to always go in from the right and exit from the left. The last one is at the offering. After offering of the lamb. Oh, so you can come in from the royal doors to bring the water and the wine, and you can also go in. Those are the 3 times that you can use the royal doors. Other than that, you should really use the side doors. Always enter with the right leg and exit with the left leg. We go from the right, exit from the left. Deacon should enter through the side doors to receive the Holy Communion. Chanting distribution hymns outside should not cause the deacons to delay receiving the Holy Communion. Sometimes they are busy with the responses and the hymns, and they almost forget to take communion. It's best to take communion and have silence in the church and no one is saying anything than to keep with the responses but then miss on the communion.
When we come in with the water and the wine for this election, we step out of the sanctuary area.
Mm-hmm.
We do that back first, left foot first.
Yes, it would be nice. Yes. No one should cross themselves when they are receiving the body or blood. Don't receive communion in the middle of organizing other things. In other words, don't be busy and doing this and bringing that and bring the towel and put away the book and take communion in the middle. You want to be prepared. You're deliberate, and you're taking the lefefa and you're approaching the mysteries. Yes, Paula.
Don't we use the royal doors for communion? Like to go out with the
Yeah, you're going out in and out with Abuna with the yes. We could add this one, sure. Not all the churches give communion outside. That's why it's not really like this is almost an exception. But we could add it. Where are the royal doors? Okay.
Yeah, it says carrying the flask of wine and water.
Mm-hmm.
That is an exception.
Yes. It's easier to write on a big device like this and not make spelling mistakes than to do it on this little thing with the fingers and okay. It is preferable to gather all those who will receive the Holy Communion outside in the first row. This is in case we give communion inside, but then there are several people that are going to receive it, then group them all and bring them to the front. All deacons must use the diocesan liturgy book. And His Eminence was also speaking about if we move into the digital world and we have an iPad or something to do the readings from, it's best to have a dedicated device to have nothing else on it, no other apps, or this would be a church device. So when you're given the incense, there's nothing else on that device. And also, we want to make sure that whatever app we're using is true to the Holy Synod and is adhering to the standards of the diocese and the church. Some people develop their own apps, and some others are part of a group that administers an app or something. We want to make sure that if it's going to be used as a canonical book, we have the full church control on it. So nobody can change anything according to their mind or understanding. It would be the metropolitan in charge of it, and this would be the reading, so that's the reading that's going to be there.
So you're talking about the readings are on a device, and that device is not linked to the screens. We still have the person
It could,
operating the screen.
yeah.
So I mean, that would be really nice, because then nothing can come in, like it's not even, doesn't even have to be on the internet, on the Wi-Fi. The readings can just be
Yeah.
there. You don't have to connect.
Absolutely.
That would be nice.
Okay. I give you a quick word about the seasonal rubrics, and I'll share with you the script as soon as it's finished. I'll send it to you. This is the book that you will be studying, and this is what I was saying, that it has several books. Book 1 has 7 chapters. The mystery of worship, the mystery of Eucharist, mystery of redemption, New Testament, Pascha, Church, and Sabbath. And it's a quick read. It's divided into these chapters, as you can see. And each chapter is only a few pages long, 4 or 5 pages, 6. Here's chapter 2. Pay attention to what is related to communion, because you're going to be serving in the altar around the throne of the Lord, and we want you to have a fuller understanding of what's happening and the history behind it. That's most of the questions are going to come that way. So after you finish first 52 pages, here's book 2, the Liturgy and the Bible. We don't have to worry about the rest of the book. Although it is a good read, it gives you more understanding of the whole liturgy, because the book is entitled Christ in the Eucharist. But you don't need to worry about memorization or anything like that past page 52. Yeah, you should have it already. Matthew sent a link with the duties and the 52 pages in one link. Yeah. Okay. We did it under 2 hours. That's great. In my mind, you're welcome. In my mind, you can't really pass the oral exam without an orientation like this, because it's not in the book. Unless you're really a seasoned deacon and you know what's going on and you understand it and it was explained to you, then you'll do well on the oral exam. But to walk in cold without this introduction, you'll really struggle through it. So it's going to be on our church channel, and Mina, maybe you can help me get a link to it, and then we can send it to the group so they can just click on it and it takes them to YouTube. And you can watch it over, play it in the background when you're driving. Hopefully it can be useful. And hopefully it would be useful for other people in the diocese. We'll turn off the camera. Any other questions? Okay, let's turn off here. This will conclude it. Glory be to God forever. Amen.